just turning 4 p.m, so we'll make a start. Welcome along to the September Planning Committee. It's good to see everybody. We'll start with apologies, please.
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Riley.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Any declarations of interest at the beginning anyone want to make? Maddie.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a declaration on agenda item 6.1, so I will be removing myself from the meeting, but I will be speaking on behalf of my residents. Thank
As
you,
a
Chair.
ward councillor.
As a ward councillor,
Yeah.
Chair.
So it's not so much an interest, but you're predetermined. So the minutes
Absolutely.
will reflect that. Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else? As ever, if you spot anything interest-wise during the meeting that we don't know now, wait till the next speaker's finished and catch my eye, and we'll get that all on the record. Anything on the minutes of our last meeting which have been circulated? 29th of August. If not, I will sign those as a true record. And Angela, if you could pass those over, I'd be grateful. I've got no urgent business under item 4. Do we have anything, excuse me, in the way of questions from the public for item 5?
No, Chair.
Okay, that will take us on then to item 6 and 6.1, which is going to be on page 3. And we'll just wait for Maddie. Thank you very much. First planning application, we're at the land to the west of Bampton Road in Liam. And Dan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. This is an application to develop land to the west of Bampton Road in the Liam neighbourhood. The application was referred to Planning Committee by Councillor Lindsay Gilmore. Firstly, I'd like to bring to members' attention an addendum report that was published on Wednesday. This refers to a letter that was sent to members by the applicant's planning agent on behalf of the applicant, and also 2 new public objections. The addendum also makes a change to condition 19, which is the affordable housing condition. The site is an existing surface level car park that's located to the north of the Windmill Public House and the Liam Local Centre. In addition to the pub, the local centre contains a newsagent's, a general food convenience store, a hot food takeaway, a hair and beauty salon, and a community hall. There's a terrace of 11 existing houses to the northwest of the site, and beyond that lies the Liam Park. The wider area is residential in character, other than the local centre uses that serve the local residential population. So here is a satellite image, a Google Earth image, that shows the site and its surroundings. So the white building there on the left-hand side of the car park is the Liam Public House. Behind that you can see the local centre, and there's flats over the local centre commercial units. The building at the top of the screen with the painted front is the community hall. The existing houses and Liam Park are on the right-hand side of the picture, and then you can see the existing glass and clothes recycling banks at the front of the site next to the main vehicle entrance. So this photo is looking north across the car park with the pub on the left-hand side. And this photo is looking south, again across the car park towards the pub and the local centre. This photo was taken within the car park, looking towards the area of the site that's proposed to be developed for housing. And as you can see, there's no line markings on the car park, so currently parking is arranged informally. This photo is the terrace of 11 houses that back onto the northwest side of the car park site. The proposal is to build 7 social rented affordable homes comprising a mix of 2 one-bedroom bungalows built to meet M42 standards for accessibility, 3 two-bedroom houses, and they are the mid-terrace units, and 2 three-bedroom houses, and they are the end-terrace units. All of the houses have private gardens and a designated parking space, and the rest of the site is to be retained as a public car park with white lines painted onto the surface to formalise 66 parking spaces. The application also includes associated works, including landscaping and widening of the access road. So here are elevation plans for the bungalows. They're proposed to be finished with brick, with grey UPVC doors and windows. And you can see the solar panels on the rear elevations, as well as the air source heat pumps. And this is the elevation plan for the terrace of 5 houses. These are finished with brick at ground floor level, with render at first floor. Doors and windows are also grey UPVC. Solar panels are on the front elevation with air source heat pumps on the rear. And there you can see the roof line is slightly staggered to address the slight change in levels across the site. The bungalow floor plans are on the left and the houses on the right. The bungalows are designed to meet Part M42 standards for accessibility, so they've all got wider door openings, extra circulation space, a private driveway right next to the front door, and all of the homes meet the nationally described space standards. The council received 93 public objections across 3 consultation periods. The main reason for objecting was the reduction in parking. There is also an urban design objection, as the dwellings front into the car park rather than towards Bampton Road, contrary to best practice urban design principles. The designing out crime officer has raised no in principle objection, but has expressed some concern over the location of the development in a car park. Other material considerations include affordable housing delivery, amenity, biodiversity, drainage, energy, land quality, and waste management. And these are assessed against the planning policies in the officer report. The report highlights that planning policy applies significant weight to providing affordable housing, particularly on brownfield sites, and it concludes that the impacts of the development are outweighed by the delivery of 7 social rented affordable homes. The application is therefore recommended for conditional approval. Thank you.
Dan, thank you very much. We have 4 speakers on this item. The first is Councillor Lindsay Gilmore, who doesn't seem to be here at the moment. What I will do with the committee's permission is to be flexible on the first 3 speakers. I don't think we can mess around with the order in terms of the applicants or the applicant's supporter going last. That's set. But if I see that Will and Maddie are here, if Lindsay appears before we get to the end of the councillors, then I'll allow her to speak. But after that, it's going to be forfeited, I'm afraid. So, Councillor Will Noble, if you'd like to come and join us, make your way to the public speakers chair. You're welcome to join us today. You have 5 minutes. Will, would you like to be told when only one is left? Okay. If you want to take a seat and... Don't take a seat, Will. Thanks. And in your own time.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the Chair, the Planning Committee and officers for facilitating this call-in today, as Councillor Gilmore is unable to be here. I also thank the residents who have contacted us and raised concerns. This proposal has been some years in the making and has been quite some concern from local residents, many of whom have pored over, reviewed and commented on the plans, one they've been invited to over several different periods recently. As a local resident myself, I use Liam shops on a daily basis. I know how busy and valued they are, and there's lots of services such as the post office, parcels, the food offerings there's takeaway, and they're also very important as they employ local people and are run by local families. The shops rely on a steady stream of footfall, and lots of people coming and going. That's how the shops survive there. This proposal takes part of the car park for social housing. As a councillor, this is a dilemma. As a councillor, this is the dilemma we face, and the need for car parking versus the much needed need for social housing. We currently have around 7,000 residents in Plymouth on the waiting list, with 400 households in temporary accommodation. And with an ageing population, and although lots of people live in the area, with the geography of Plymouth, and you could say Moorview's almost on 7 hills. There's 7 hills of Rome, but there's definitely 7 hills in Moorview. Lots of houses. We know residents sometimes are trapped in just a couple of rooms of their house because they can no longer get out to the back garden, they can't get out the front, there's steps up to a car parking space, there's steps to go to the shops in every direction. So we know that people need accessible housing, and also people want to live near where their support networks, friends and family live as well. So, the extra accommodation, although it's seven dwellings, actually is to provide much needed accommodation for local people. And we do know also, as anecdotally, there's lots of people in the area. You can see in the picture up there, there's already some bungalows just behind the flats there and just on the edge of the park. And out of necessity, people have other members of their family living in with them. It's not some kind of high-minded, intergenerational living like you see in a Sunday supplement. People are actually doing this out of necessity. People have their grandchildren, things living in with them because those people have nowhere else to live. So, this would help provide that more. The car park, there has been some informal use of the car park. As the planning officer said, it's not demarcated and things. There's been some unfortunate instances of fly tipping and different vehicles and things stored there as it outlines in the report. Obviously, if this was improved, it would help smarten the car park up. But the concern is people being able to, not just for residents parking, but lots of people arrive and come and go, and the ease of use of the car park, people can just pop to the shops and come away again. That's
1 minute.
An important part. Okay, so I'd just like to sum up by saying this is a difficult decision as you're weighing up these two needs, the needs of having a car park and the needs of social housing, and it's right that this has been considered by councillors. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to make your way back again. And Maddie is next, if you'd like to come and join us. As I'm sure you know, you have 5 minutes. Would you like to be told when 4 have gone? Absolutely. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. As a councillor, I sat on the non-executive board of directors for PCH for almost 4 years, and I know from personal experience what an exceptional housing association PCH is. They really care about their tenants and their property assets. I went on many site visits with them to view development opportunities for homes for residents, some suitable and some not. There are many pros and cons to this application, but I do worry about the potential reputational damage that this could do to PCH, but I appreciate this is not a planning consideration. Over 100 letters of objection from residents and no letters of support cannot be ignored. This application is all about parking, and something officers have failed to recognise that the majority of the homes in this area are family homes, people with SUVs, family cars, baby seats. The average size of the parking spaces does not accommodate such vehicles or parents with baby seats requiring larger door opening spaces, hence why supermarkets have parent and baby spaces. Section 6 on page 8 states that the 2 compliant bungalows meet accessible housing needs, so should these bungalows be allocated with disabled parking bays or larger parking bays to accommodate people with mobility issues? Suzanne, Keith and I worked incredibly hard with Liam Primary School to establish the Park and Stride scheme, which enables parents to park here and walk their children to school, which alleviates parking issues at the school gates. Everyone knows that school times are horrendous for parents, schools and residents. There is a possibility that this problem will manifest again if parking is drastically reduced in this location. This car park is on a main bus route to the hospital. There is nothing in the report around hospital staff using this car park as a park and ride. It is worth noting that the park and ride at the George is used by hospital staff who walk to work and don't even catch the buses. Liam Community Hall has people from all over the ward visiting events such as Knitter Natter, Bingo, Men's Shed, Scouts, Brownies, children's parties, dog training. The hall is a polling station for thousands of residents in the surrounding areas. The Windmill Pub holds events. There's no mention of this either. Liam Park is used for community events such as the Play Rangers. The removal of the bottle and clothes banks could lead to fly tipping, and this area is already a hotspot. Has this properly been considered, and where will the skips be recited, please? Lorries on their way to Estover Industrial Unit estates often use this car park overnight to allow drivers to get some well-earned rest. Has this been noted, as it's not mentioned in the officer's report? To lose over a third of the current parking spaces is a travesty, especially as the report mentions several times that Google Earth shows 68 vehicles regularly using the site. I've noted there's no mention of the type or size of the 68 vehicles, as this is an unmarked car park. It is also important to state this is not a brownfield site. It is a well-used car park and not a development opportunity. Car parking all over Millview is at a premium with many resident disputes, as stated on page 6 by the police. I myself, as 10 years as a councillor, have added CPZs in the area around the hospital, and these problems migrate. I appreciate this is an unprecedented housing crisis in the city, but we have blocks of empty student accommodation and unfinished developments all around the city too. There is also the noise and dust consideration for the residents in the area. Condition 7 on page 22 is not robust enough. Work could begin at midnight and the entire car park could be closed during construction. How much disruption will this cause? We all know once the heavy construction equipment arrives and the materials, over half the car park will be fenced off due to health and safety. Can you confirm whether this will or will not be the case, please? All in all, this development should not go ahead. Once this space is gone, it's gone forever. There are many unused redundant sites all around Plymouth. The large concrete area on Embankment Lane, the site of the Grand Hotel, the Civic Centre, unfinished flats in Athenaeum Place and Mill Bay Road. There are empty factories on Estover Road.
1 minute.
There are new homes being built in Sherford and Woolwell. So why develop a well-utilised car park that is used daily by my residents and other people in the surrounding areas for social events, for business, for travel to the hospital, for travel to school? This is a well-established community and the car park is right in the heart of it. Over 100 letters of objection, so please think very carefully before you deprive mine and Will's residents of something that can never be replaced for the sake of a couple of buildings that could be easily built elsewhere. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. And our final speaker on this one is Alex Graves. Yeah, there you are, sir. You're welcome to join us today. You too will have 5 minutes. Would you like to be told when 4 have gone? Okay, over to you.
Chair, members, I act for the applicant, Plymouth Community Homes, and speak in support of your officer's recommendation. This meeting represents a culmination of 5 years' work. The applicant is a charitable registered provider and Plymouth's largest social housing landlord, providing homes to 35,000 people. PCH believe that everyone has the right to a clean, comfortable, safe and affordable place to call home. Plymouth is experiencing an unprecedented housing and homelessness crisis. There are more than 7,000 households who continue to wait for the chance to find a decent home that they can rent at an affordable price, many waiting for years. Demand is outstripping supply, with significant increase in homelessness and the use of temporary accommodation. There are currently 217 households with no secure accommodation at all. Some in this room may have experience of these difficulties. The application site has been identified by the council and is as a site for release to help accelerate affordable housing delivery, which is one of the council's corporate priorities. The applicant has worked closely with the council for over 5 years and made numerous changes to address the issues that have arisen. The proposal will deliver 7 affordable homes ranging in size from 1 to 3 bedroom, including 2 M42 accessible bungalows. All homes are social rent with none for sale. It should be noted how rare it is to deliver social rent bungalows. The proposal will also deliver wider benefits: the reuse of brownfield land to reduce pressure on greenfield land, tree planting and biodiversity net gain of over 17%, white lining of the car park, provision of a footway on the southern side of the bell mouth of the junction with Bampton Road and a footpath connecting through to Bampton Road on the northern side, EV charging points for each home, and passive wiring to enable additional charging points in the future. Most consultees are content. There is some local objection, which is not unusual for a proposal of this nature. This primarily relates to concern over the level of parking retained in the car park. We understand locals' frustration in wanting to ensure an adequate parking level is retained. The applicant has worked tirelessly to achieve this. PCH actually own the local centre, and ensuring it thrives is one of their key objectives. The Highway Authority have observed demand over multiple visits to the car park, and a peak of 64 cars has been observed. Along with parking for the proposed homes, the provision of 66 parking spaces for the general public, including disabled parking provision, is also proposed. This is more spaces than the peak use observed. The car park currently has no white lining, which encourages antisocial parking and misuse of the car park. The proposed white lining and footway at the entrance will improve manoeuvrability and safety and discourage ad hoc parking. We believe the proposal will in fact improve highway safety. The scheme will provide 7 households with an opportunity to find a secure home of their own, and I argue in favour of the future residents of the scheme who are not here to present their own case. The proposal's benefits weigh very significantly in favour of the application. This is a worthy scheme that accords with the local plan. I'm sure that with all your experience, you'll look fairly at the plans before you. Dealing with a housing crisis on this scale requires the council to make difficult decisions, and we strongly urge you to support your own expert officers and grant planning permission for these desperately needed affordable homes. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Mr. Graves, thank you very much. Now open to the committee, and I'll start by saying that I totally endorse the points that Councillor Will Noble made. This is the sort of dilemma that we have to face as ward councillors often, but more often as members of the planning committee. And car parking is something that affects a lot of our wards, I'm sure, but for my money at the moment, solving the homelessness crisis, which we've heard reference to, is a huge emergency, in my view, that we face, and that's where I'm focusing at the moment. It'll be interesting to see where the debate takes us as we hear more about the detail of the mathematics and the proposed new layout of the car park. I dare say that will crop up, but that's where I am at the moment. Does anybody want to? Angela?
Thank you, Chair. I attended the site visit yesterday, but like a lot of people in this room, it's a very familiar place. Many have been there very often. We've often parked there. But that made me listen even more carefully to the speakers, and I've also read the papers very, very carefully. And all that leads me to one conclusion, that we should now be guided by the analysis in the papers, and particularly the principle of development and housing delivery. And as Mr. Graves has said, we are in an emergency. And Plans for Homes 4 is the council's housing strategy. Plymouth faces a challenge, and I think we have to consider how we meet that. And I have been informed that there are very few places like this in Plymouth that do offer this windfall site where we can put just a few homes for people in need of homes. So parking does seem to be the main consideration. And yesterday there were a lot of cars, it's true, but there was still a lot of space. But I think very significantly, as you see at the bottom of that photograph, a huge swathe of the car park is permanently taken up with motorhomes. Every time you go there, there are motorhomes and large spaces between them, and even sometimes vehicles for sale. Now, there's a sign at the edge saying that's illegal, but it's not enforced. So there is this large space. It's a lovely place, actually. It's a beautiful site with wonderful views. So I do think that, in this case, it would be nicer for 7 households to have a home rather than keep it there for illegal vehicles.
Thanks, Angela. Kathy?
Thank you, Chair. I fully appreciate the need for affordable housing, but it does concern me that there are going to be families living just outside the pub. There's going to be a car park on 3 sides of the properties, and there's going to be a lot of noise, there's going to be a lot of disturbance, possibly antisocial behaviour, which is not good for children to observe. They might be kept awake at night, there might be deliveries first thing in the morning, they might be woken up in the morning, there might be all sorts of consequences, and I think if we're going to deliver affordable housing, it should be good quality affordable housing in the right position.
Andrew, do you want to turn your mic off? Thanks. Who's next? Sarah.
There's a question about the design. In the officer's presentation, it was mentioned that the front doors would be facing into the car park and not out onto the road. Have I got that the right way round? Which isn't desirable. Does it have to be like that? Or is there a sort of geographical constraint and a sort of, material reason for that?
Thank you. During the pre-application negotiations, the urban designer raised his objections to the orientation of the dwellings. We tried to seek to negotiate alterations to the design layout so the dwellings would front onto Bampton Road. The applicant wasn't able or willing to do this, and the justification given, it's in the report, the justification given was that there is a change of levels of up to around 2 metres between the car park surface and Bampton Road to the east. So to achieve an active frontage, that would require either building the ground floor levels of the dwellings up, which would also require ramps and steps to gain access to the front of the properties, or it would require excavation of the grass bank and then a retaining wall to hold back the land. So that was something which was dismissed by the applicant at the pre-app stage, and the design followed through to the application for the same reasons. There is also the added complication of a southwest water, surface water sewer, which runs in that grass verge to the east of the site. So to build within, there's a 3 metre zone either side of a South West Water sewer in which you would need to get permission from South West Water to develop in there. So that would also pose a constraint to achieving an active frontage onto Bampton Road.
I think just to follow up, I think my concern is that point that, you know, we do need social housing desperately because of the aforementioned housing crisis, but it has to be the right houses in the right place. Thank you, Chair.
I can't see this isn't the right house in the right place. We can all look at detail, but I'm struggling to see that there's anything wrong with this. Could any scheme be better? Yes, of course. In my 150 years on the planning committee, I've yet to see a scheme that is absolutely perfect that I wouldn't tweak around if I had the opportunity to. But we can only look at what's in front of us, and if there are no material reasons to turn it down and the presumption would be in favour, then I'm struggling to see. I mean, I have to say that in my ward, people, and it's in response to Kathy's point, people do live quite near pubs and the world doesn't come to an end, including families. I think we ought to start trusting people to live their lives properly, and the distance between what's proposed and the existing housing isn't too different. And I don't see people rushing to move out because of horrible noise and behaviour coming out of the Windmill pub. If people are happy to live there with little or no disturbance now, I can't see that being extremely different in the future, but that's my sort of take on it. I saw Paul, and then we'll go to Josh. So Paul first, please.
Thanks, Chair. Could you address the point made about disruption to the car park during the building, how long it's going to be disrupted for, and how many spaces will be lost while it's being built?
The applicant has confirmed that the area of the housing development would be closed during construction. The rest of the car park would remain open for the duration of the construction period. They advised that there would likely be traffic lights, so perhaps some inconvenience, but it would remain open. Clearly, once the development is completed, the parking spaces, the white lines will need to be painted on the surface. The planning condition requires those lines to be painted on within 8 weeks of completion of the first dwelling. So there would be some disruption within 8 weeks of completion of the first dwelling to paint the lines on the surface. But during the construction period, I've been told that the whole car park, other than that area for the housing, would remain open.
Does that mean then that the available car parking, were the scheme to be implemented, would be available during construction? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, that's helpful, thanks. Josh was next.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, apologies. No, I'd like to speak in support, as you did yourself. You know, much of our city, you know, we have so many deprived wards where people live in Victorian or even older housing in really close proximity to pubs, and that doesn't have an obvious or distinctive, definite impact on them as individuals. They have a choice. And I think in this instance, you know, I'm very cautious about the language being used of people being deprived of parking spaces. Again, living and working across wards where people have, you know, the whole residential area permitted, so you can manage how people park considerately to their neighbours. You know, I think there are solutions, and this seemingly provides a solution. I'd like to pick up the point on dust and that impact, and, you know, question, you know, do you feel that there will be an impact to residents from the development and the dust that was mentioned? And I'll load you with a couple of questions, actually, if that's okay. And also the lorries. Personally, my sort of opinion would be that we shouldn't necessarily be encouraging commercial vehicles to park overnight in a residential area, and if anything, that's likely to encourage antisocial behaviours. Do you have any thought or steer on that, please?
Thank you. In response to the first question, condition 4 is the Drainage Construction Environment Management Plan. So clearly for all development, there is a risk that construction debris can enter watercourses, which can cause pollution. So there's a requirement for the applicant to submit prior to commencement of development the Drainage Construction Environment Management Plan, which would demonstrate how things like debris from construction processes would be managed to prevent them from polluting watercourses, and naturally that would also mitigate dust and debris further afield. The second question was the overnight vehicle storage. Clearly that takes place at the moment. It's not authorised. There is a sign on the entrance to the car park which says that vehicle storage is not authorised, but at the moment that is not being enforced. We did try to negotiate with the applicant to apply a condition that would require them to apply for a traffic regulation order, and the council street service parking team suggested that the best way of achieving that there would be to require vehicles to park within the confines of parking spaces, and if a car was to park outside of the confines, then enforcement action could be taken. That was put to the applicant, and the applicant wasn't able to agree that condition because they will not be the owner of the car park moving forward. That remains with the council. The council also wasn't prepared to agree to apply for a traffic regulation order for the reasons outlined in the officer's report. What we have done is we have applied an informative that outlines an expectation that use of the car park would be monitored upon completion of the development, and if there is an ongoing problem with unauthorised use, which affects local residents and users of the the local centre, then measures could be put in place, and that could include a traffic regulation order.
Correspondent Chair, thank you. Perfect. No, that's really reassuring. I think, as individuals, it's very easy to sort of think, I don't want this, not in my backyard. And, what you've done is reassure me that, there is no good reason that we shouldn't be building affordable, accessible housing for our community. So thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Kevin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to be speaking not in support for this. One of the things I like to do is try and keep things as simple as possible. When I think about the housing that's being proposed here, I think about, is that something I would like my parents to be living in? And I look at the kind of reasoning around it, and I'm thinking, I can only see this as highlighting antisocial behaviour, highlighting the noise, highlighting the bigger risks. We're putting housing by a main road. It's effectively in a pub car park. And some of the points that have been raised here today about there's other housing that's around pubs. Well, yeah, that may be so, but what tends to happen is a lot of complaints when it comes to loud noise from the pub get made about that, and it puts an increased pressure on business. And that is a well-liked, well-used business. And I consider that there would be additional pressures if we start building housing around it, that could lead to complaints. And furthermore, we talk about the parking. We're saying about there be 64 car parking spaces, yet we've literally put a photo up which pretty much has the same amount of cars that we're willing to state that's all that's needed. Now imagine if Google Earth just happened to capture that on its busiest. I've been there several times, and I've seen the car park a lot busier than that, and that for me expresses a need for the community. So for many of these reasons, that's why I just can't support it. I'm in favour for affordable, accessible housing, but I just think the location isn't right on this one.
Have we had any concerns raised about, and because you mentioned the police in terms of their designing out crime. Have we had any specific issues about the proximity to existing businesses? Because I'm just conscious that we consult with our experts, and our job is to weigh up their responses. It's not our job to introduce evidence ourselves. That's something that the committee should shy away from. And so that's, have we had any concerns raised by our consultees about those issues that Kevin's raised there?
Thank you. The Public Protection Service was consulted on the application, and I specifically asked them about noise and noise impacts. And that's where the agent for change principle comes into effect, and this is in the MPPF. And the agent for change principle was initially introduced to protect music venues and nightclubs from additional licensing requirements because of housing being built nearby, and that comes into effect here. So essentially, if people living in the proposed houses, if these are built, if they were to complain about noise coming from the pub, the council would be unable to take action against the pub in terms of applying additional restrictions because the pub predates the housing. So instead, what we've done is we've recommended applying a condition which requires the dwellings to be built out to a standard that reduces sound to a level that's specified in the condition to protect residents from noise disturbances.
Could you just perhaps expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll find the condition. There's an informative which brings to the attention of the applicant or the developer that the agent for change principle applies here. So it requires, this is the condition, the informative, the agent for change, this is informative 5, the agent for change principle will apply. The council is unable to take any action to require a reduction in noise levels from nearby licensed or commercial businesses in existence before the development's finished. And then condition 22, all dwellings shall be constructed in accordance to the relevant British standard and World Health Organization guidelines for community noise so as to provide sound insulation against externally generated noise. The good room criteria shall be applied, meaning there must be no more than 35 decibels for living rooms, between 7 and 11, and for bedrooms, externally generated noise must not exceed 30 decibels. And 45 decibels with windows shut. So there are conditions and informatives which are recommended to protect the amenity of future occupiers from noise from the adjacent pub.
In reference to that, so how does that work and vice versa? So say that the pub is making a lot of noise and now we've got potentially vulnerable and accessible, people utilising these accessible buildings. Now the council can't take any action. So how do we go around that?
There is 22 metres of separation between the nearest dwellings, that's the houses in this case, and the pub. The north side of the pub, which is closest to the dwellings, is it's the toilets, it's the kitchen, it's the restaurant, the quieter side of the pub. The bar and the outdoor seating area is on the other side of the pub, and that's only 7 metres from the nearest existing dwellings. So at the moment, there's a 7-metre relationship. If these houses are built, there's a 22-metre relationship. So actually, there's existing houses that are there on the site which will be much more adversely affected than these houses.
And on your point about your family, this planning isn't about whether we like things or not. These houses, if they were built, might not be my cup of tea. It's, are they acceptable in planning terms? That's what all of us on every planning application have to determine. Sadly, and this is where it's frustrating for us as councillors, we leave our personal tastes at the door. I've had to vote for things that I personally don't like and don't like the look of and aren't my cup of tea. That's not our job. Our job is to look at the material planning reasons and then vote accordingly. And as I said at the beginning, I'm struggling to see any material reasons against this. I might not like the design myself, and everybody is entitled to feel the same. That's very, very different from saying they're wrong in planning terms, and my worry is that if we go down that route, we will go, and we were to turn it down on grounds such as those, we'd go straight to an appeal and have costs awarded against us, which our constituents would have to foot the bill for. So please, I would urge committee members to be very, very careful in what our considerations are. Did I see a hand over here? Matt, apologies.
Thanks, Chair. You just answered my question about how far the existing properties are from the pub compared to the new ones. Have there been any significant issues around antisocial behaviour raised by people already living in those properties? Is there a history of any issues for people living in those houses already?
I'm not aware of, as in antisocial behaviour from the pub. I don't know if there are current antisocial behaviour issues. Councillor Bridgman highlighted that there is fly tipping that takes place, and I've observed that there. Generally around the recycle banks, there's quite a lot of material which is currently fly tipped there, but I don't know whether there are existing complaints.
Would it be normal for those sort of complaints or issues to be raised when we consult with the police or public protection?
Yes, it would be.
So if we were putting, I don't know, an infant school next to the most noisy club in Union Street or the Barbican or wherever people a lot younger than me go these days, those sorts of issues we would expect to be raised.
I have other applications, which I won't mention, in which the Public Protection Service have raised concerns. There haven't been any concerns brought to my attention by Public Protection or the police.
Does that help? Thanks. Did I see Jeremy? Yep.
I'm pressing the wrong button. Are there any considerations given in the planning around air quality and issues around air quality? As been raised, traffic will be moving on all sides of these properties. The residential area of these new properties is very small, and effectively they are operating within and adjacent to a car park. Access to that car park, and on the other front is a main road. I'm aware that there are reports that pollution is highest in areas not of continual traffic but of start-stop traffic, such because petrochemical, that petrol and diesel engines produce far more diesel when they're started than when they're running continuously. So my question is around air quality. Is there any assessment of air quality, or is there any need for an assessment of air quality around the quality of life of these dwellings, new dwellings?
So Plymouth has identified an air quality management area which is adjacent to Tavistock Road. That's the only air quality management area in the city. As a validation requirement for planning applications, applications within the air quality management area are required to submit details on air quality. This site being outside of the air quality management area, there is no requirement for the applicant to submit those details. Clearly the site is adjacent to a road, but a lot of new houses are also adjacent to roads. That's not something that we would generally assess unless it is within the air quality management area.
would that be any reason, a material reason, to not support the application?
Not for this application outside of the air quality management area.
Thanks. I don't want to shut anybody off. Kathy, right on cue.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the bins, they're obviously much used because there's fly tipping around them. Where are they going to be moved to?
The recycling facilities. To clarify, the waste that I've seen fly tipped around the bottle banks and the clothes banks.
Use the cursor, because we're talking about lots of different areas on the
so just
on the plan.
By the site entrance there's the junction, and you can see at the bottom of the picture there's 2 green glass recycle banks and then a turquoise. That's the location of the recycle banks. The waste material that I've seen is not clothes or bottles that have been thrown in that location. It's fly tipping. The council street service team, the waste part of the council, was consulted on the whether to retain these recycling facilities, and they were fully supportive of their removal. The reason being is because glass is included as part of the household waste recycling service which the council offers, and there are facilities at Chelsea Meadow and other recycling centres and other locations around the city for clothes recycling. So street service were fully supportive of their removal.
So there won't be any more in this particular area. People have to go to Chelsea Meadow or somewhere to dispose of their goods.
Correct, although, as I noted, glass bottles are collected as part of the council's free household recycling service.
Right, thanks for, as I said, don't want to cut anybody off, but thank you so much for a really, really in-depth debate. I think we've examined quite a lot of issues between us, and I'm grateful for that, as I'm sure the applicant and local people are too. We have a plan for homes, which this is part of, and that's something that we need to be very, very conscious of. There is no perfect planning application that meets everybody's tastes, but that's not what we're here to judge. We have to look at material planning considerations, and I'm worried that if every time we get something that we don't see that's totally to our individual liking, we're going to put the plan for homes at risk, and that's not our job as a planning committee. We owe it to local people and to applicants to look at planning considerations only. That's so important. I say that to newer members of the committee as well as to more experienced ones. The housing crisis that we face is real. It is upon us. It is happening now. And although there are going to be negative aspects to every application, I think the mitigation that's been put in place here and the assurances we've got satisfy me that what we've presented with and what we're considering is acceptable in planning terms, and that's the important consideration for us. And I would hate for housing like this to be lost for reasons other than planning considerations, which is our role here today. So I'm happy to support the recommendation, which is to grant conditionally. And if we could open the voting, please. What was the quiz show? Press your buttons now. Did you not cast a vote? I will declare that one carried. Did you not? Did we cancel? All right, let's open the vote again. And if everybody could look at Councillor Gosling and put total pressure on him to vote early, that would be appreciated. Any plans for Christmas, anybody? Would you like to know how it went? You sure? Well, if you believe technology over everybody else, that's up to you, but I will declare that one carried. Thank you very much. And we will wait for Maddie to retake her place and catch her breath. And welcome, Abby. And we're at page 31 in my pack. So, item 6.2, we're at 14 North Hill, and Abby, in your own time.
Thank you, Chair. Just waiting for the presentation to come up. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So this application relates to 40 to 42 North Hill and is for a proposed change of use, conversion and extension to the building to create purpose-built student accommodation for 16 student units. The application has been referred to Planning Committee by Councillor Steve Ricketts. The application site is located on North Hill. Mutley District Centre is located to the north and the city centre to the south. The University of Plymouth is to the southwest and the Arts University is further to the southeast. Now, as we zoom in, I have to say this aerial image is outdated in terms of surrounding development, but I will show you photos of that in a second. But this image is helpful in showing the site's corner location where Bedford Terrace joins North Hill, and you can see Drake's Reservoir there on the opposite side of North Hill. So the application building is a double-fronted unit. It's been vacant since 2019 and it was previously in use as a bar with food provision. It was previously Old Tom's and before that it was Mousetrap. The building is single-storey with a basement level and a roof terrace, and it sits within a small parade of 3 commercial units. Now I shall show you some images of the surrounding area. So this image is looking down Bedford Terrace, which is a residential street and includes student accommodation. The application building is the single-storey building there on the right. This image is taken from North Hill. The application building is the double-fronted unit there, marked with the red arrow. You can see the Reservoir purpose-built student accommodation building on your left. And just to show that again, so that's the Reservoir newly completed purpose-built student accommodation building. Now there are a number of commercial units along North Hill, some with residential uses above. And as we move away from North Hill, it's predominantly residential uses within the surrounding streets. And you can also see the Spa convenience store there on the right, which is to the north of the application building. So the applicant proposes to convert the existing building and extend it by adding 2 additional stories to create purpose-built student accommodation for 16 student units. Please note that I will refer to purpose-built student accommodation as PBSA throughout this presentation. So this illustration demonstrates what the development will look like. I will go on to the floor plans, but in regard to the design, the entrance is off the North Hill frontage, where the applicant proposes full-height glazing, planting, and Plymouth limestone cladding. At upper floors, there is a taller corner feature in rock panel cladding with render on the remaining areas of the building, plus recessed windows and panelling. So this illustration shows the North Hill elevation and also the southern elevation on which the applicant is proposing rock panel cladding and recessed panels to provide some modelling and interest. This illustration is looking directly at the building from North Hill. So here are the 2D proposed elevation plans. There are timber-clad external bin stores proposed along Bedford Terrace, which would replace the bins used previously. So as I mentioned, the building is currently vacant. It's laid out with a large basement level, ground floor, and a roof terrace. Moving on to the proposed plans, I should note that the proposal does not seek to alter the depth or width of the property. The proposal is for communal student facilities at basement level, including games room, cinema room, laundry provision, and seating areas. There are no windows to the basement. A light well is proposed for the corner area, which would use the natural daylight from the glazing at ground floor. So that is this area here. So at ground floor, we have the entrance off the North Hill frontage. This leads to a reception area and a cycle store, and we then have 4 of the student units. The first and second floors repeat themselves. All of the units measure between 20 to 27 square metres. Then at roof level, the applicant proposes a partial green sedum roof, air source heat pumps, and solar PV panels. Just to note that further clarification was sought around the layout of the roof space, so this is an updated roof plan, which, if approved, would require an amendment to Condition 1 approved plans. Here are the details of the proposed timber bin enclosures that would be located on the Bedford Terrace elevation with planting. And here is a comparison to show the existing and that proposed. So in terms of planning considerations, at a strategic level, we have a requirement to deliver 19,000 new homes within the plan period, and this application would contribute to this. When assessing the principle of purpose-built student accommodation, it is relevant to note that the site does not benefit from a site allocation in the joint local plan, and we must therefore apply the 11 tests of Policy Dev 12. Now, Policy Dev 12 specifically relates to purpose-built student accommodation in Plymouth. It recognises that there is a need for PBSA within the city, and it is preferable that student needs are met as far as possible in purpose-built student accommodation because it can reduce the need to convert general housing into student-occupied flats and houses of multiple occupation. And this is reflected in the Council's monitoring data last published in March 2023, which shows a steady decline in the number of non-purpose-built student accommodation dwelling units solely occupied by students, which have dropped from 3,373 in 2014 to 1,823 in 2022. Purpose-built student accommodation can also provide a stock of well-managed, secure and regulated environments that will minimise the impact on amenity for other households and residential neighbourhoods. Policy Dev 12 also seeks to avoid an excessive concentration of student accommodation in one area, as this would likely lead to unbalanced communities, and it seeks to protect residential amenity. So the applicant has provided information to address the 11 tests of Dev 12, and this is set out in the officer report. Officers accept that sufficient information has been provided to demonstrate that there is a need for this type of accommodation. Officers acknowledge that since 2020, student enrolment numbers within the city are on the rise. Council monitoring data showed the total number of student enrolment numbers in 2022/23 totaled circa 24,800, whilst existing number of bed spaces within purpose-built student accommodation, including those under construction, totaled 7,703. The applicant has highlighted a continued high demand for student accommodation and note that their own supply of student accommodation has been fully let for the past 26 years. Information from Plymouth University and a local letting agent substantiate this high demand. Plymouth University have identified that a higher proportion of students are now selecting purpose-built student accommodation beyond their first year of study, and Plymouth University considered this development would be suited to undergraduate and postgraduate home and international students. Local letting agents note that they have experienced a gradual migration of students from less suitable HMOs in the city to purpose-built apartments. So in terms of criteria 2, the site is located in an appropriate location and is within walking distance to 2 of the universities, local shops and amenities, and the site is well served by public transport. In terms of criteria 3, which seeks to prevent an excessive concentration of student accommodation in one locality, it is acknowledged that this area has a high concentration of student accommodation, and this proposal will add to that. As we saw earlier, there's the Reservoir PBSA scheme on the opposite side of North Hill, which provides 74 bed spaces. There are larger notable PBSA developments within the Plymouth University campus, including Mary Newman and Francis Drake Hall of Residence, totaling 480 bed spaces, and these are located circa 180 to 200 metres from the site. There are other PBSA developments within Greenbank and Mutley, such as Bowden Hall, located at 76 North Hill, and a number of PBSA developments within Gilwell Street and Radnor Street, such as Gilwell Hall's Residence, which is located 200 metres from the site. There are other types of student accommodation in the area, including that within Bedford Terrace, such as student-occupied flats and houses of multiple occupation. Officers note that the building occupies a corner plot within a commercial parade of units, and there is some degree of separation from family dwellings. Officers also note that the policy requires purpose-built student accommodation to be in accessible locations to the universities, and officers recognise that underutilised sites such as this are likely to be favourable for further development. Officers do not consider the proposal would conflict with adjacent uses or the general amenity of the surrounding area, noting the details of building security and management and arrival plans have been submitted and accepted by the Designing Out Crime Officer and Highway Authority. So North Hill is a busy road, and whilst the application would add to this student concentration, it is not considered to constitute such a significant addition as to warrant a refusal of this application. So another test of Dev 12 is ensuring that the proposal does not result in the harmful loss of an existing use. So as I said, the site has been vacant since 2019, and the applicant has provided marketing evidence to demonstrate the site has been effectively marketed for a substantial period of time, and to date, no commercial deal has been forthcoming. Officers have also taken into consideration the fact that the site is not within a designated local centre, and acknowledge that there are a number of other remaining commercial units within North Hill to serve the needs of the community. So officers, in consultation with the Council's Economic Development Team, raised no objection in respect of the change of use of the commercial unit. The layout of the building is considered to provide high quality accommodation for students in terms of dimensions and facilities. Limited external amenity space is proposed. However, the site is close to Drake's Place on the opposite side of North Hill, and the site is within 11-minute walking distance to Beaumont Park. Please note that within the officer report, the reference to Addison Park is an error. Officers also consider the applicant has adequately demonstrated how the building could be converted into residential flats should the need for this type of accommodation change in the future. And in terms of criteria 10, which seeks to control on-street parking impacts, Highways considered the site to be car-free development. Residents residing in the building would not be eligible for parking permits or visitor tickets for the 3 adjacent resident parking schemes. The site would provide cycle parking and would utilise 2 existing parking spaces adjacent to the neighbouring building for the purposes of student drop-off, collection and deliveries. And then with regards to design, this has positively evolved since pre-application discussions, and urban design officers raise no objection subject to finer detailing around materials and a maintenance regime which could be dealt with via conditions. Officers have welcomed positive amendments secured through the process, including the use of Plymouth limestone, which is a contextually appropriate high-quality material. The development is exempt from the National Biodiversity Net Gain requirements. However, a net gain would be delivered through the proposed provision of a partial green roof, planting at street level, and installation of bird and bat boxes and bee bricks. Natural infrastructure officers raise no objection, subject to conditions requiring full planting details and a landscape ecological management plan. The proposal contributes to the city's climate emergency initiatives by seeking to reuse the existing building and incorporating renewable energy technologies, including solar PV panels, air source heat pumps, and battery storage. It's recommended that these are secured via condition. And lastly, surface water from the existing building drains into a combined sewer, and officers acknowledge that due to the dense urban area, there is little opportunity for improving surface water drainage. However, the proposed provision of the partial green roof would provide some level of attenuation. The applicant has sought consent from South West Water to connect to the combined sewer, and this has been accepted. So the council's lead local flood authority raised no objection, subject to securing the implementation and full details of the green roof for a condition, along with details relating to maintenance and a construction environment management plan. So to conclude, the officer recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. The proposal would contribute to the city's housing supply through the provision of 16 high-quality student units. Officers acknowledge that there is a high concentration of student accommodation in this area, but on balance, do not consider that this application is such a significant addition as to warrant a refusal. The proposal would bring a vacant building back into use, would benefit the street scene, and is considered to comply with all other policies. Thank you.
Ali, thank you very much. We have 2 speakers on this item. The first is Councillor Steve Ricketts, if you'd like to make your way down. First visit to the planning committee in a good while. Nothing's changed though, you still have 5 minutes. Would you like to be told when 4 have gone? Yes, please. Okay. I'd like to take a seat, Steve. Well, no, this is a sitting committee, and given it some thought, so if you could do what every other speaker does.
I've always stood for the last 14 years. If you would, Chair, I'd appreciate it. I want to stand up for local people.
Well,
I've just done it for 14 years. I'm more comfortable.
I do the
standing.
puns on this committee. Let's get that. Let's get that clear from the get-go.
I appreciate it, Chair.
We will speak. We'll speak
you.
off. We'll take this offline. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. 42 North Hill, obviously it's such a point in the city that I'm sure you're all very familiar with North Hill, and we're all very passionate about North Hill. We want to make sure everything is planned properly on North Hill, because it's just one of those places that you just go through it constantly. And it deals with the famous Mousetrap bar. That's how most people know it, and it's obviously been out of use for some time. And now we're all passionate to make sure we get this right, okay? And it's for me, this is inappropriate, okay? This is a beautiful 19th century double-fronted commercial unit, okay? Very hard to see them finite around the city. Beautiful, right in the middle of other commercial units. We need to keep that commercial hub on North Hill, and it's falling apart at the moment, so we need to continue that on this level. There was a previous pre-application that was refused, which I would say was almost identical to this, and I would say nothing has changed, okay? Nothing has changed. It's still inappropriate, and it goes against Dev 12, particularly the point on criteria 3, which criteria 3, Dev 12 is where this needs to be refused, okay? The saturation of student accommodation in that area is throwing the imbalance out in that community, okay? And nothing has changed, and it still needs to be refused. This doesn't help the housing stock in the area. I've been representing this area on and off for 20 years, okay? It's not going to help, okay? We've heard this before. It's been going on for a number of years. There are empty houses in the Greenbank area, okay? They're not being filled by family homes. This will not help. Existing student blocks, right, for many years are not full in the city. We know that. This application makes no sense. The council's buying up student properties, hundreds big student blocks for homelessness. And then we have an application like this. It's contrary to everything the council's doing. Student numbers, and we can get into figures all you like, but at the end of the day, people coming from around the country to Plymouth University are going down. Okay, there's a lot more people in the city now studying, and there's obviously in those figures is 3 universities, and you can accumulate the numbers however you want, but predominantly it's the University of Plymouth on this imprint, and the numbers are going down. And you can see it and you can feel it, and I know it by walking around the community I represent. This is not going to help. I'm completely confused in the report that the officers are encouraging students to live in these purpose-built blocks. I'm completely confused why, when we need the HMOs to be upgraded and improved to have a better housing stock in that city centre location, predominantly in Drake Ward. As the report says, and it outlines how many rooms are already on North Hill. Hundreds and hundreds of them. Hundreds of them. Okay? And we need to ensure that it has mixed use and the balance is out of sync. And again, I bring you back to policy Dev 12 criteria 3. On the economic development side, yes, it was previously refused, the pre-application, and now it's come back. But I would say nothing's changed, because just because a deal hasn't been done, okay, doesn't mean there hasn't been interest. Okay? And what I'm passionate about also, and especially through COVID, it really brought it home to me. We need outside space. There's mental health, okay, especially with young people. Okay, we've got a basement environment with hardly any light and no outside space, and I'll fight tooth and nail. And I've been doing that for 20 years. When when living space gets turned into bedrooms for extra finance, that has not been built in. And that's unacceptable, and I'll fight for that on every application.
1 minute.
The parking pressure, well, I don't really need to say much more, but it's there and it's a point for refusal. You look at those streets, Bedford Terrace, all around those areas, Garden Place, overrun with cars. Design, again, an obvious point, a very, very obvious point of refusal. Okay, it's completely out of sync with the area, it's out of the pattern of the area, it's within commercial units. And again, it comes down to that would be Dev 10, okay? That's where you can refuse it on the design, okay? Nothing has changed from this application, and this application will lead to an unbalanced community, which again is highlighted in criteria 3 Dev 12. The massing of this building is completely wrong. Please refuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Ricketts. And our final speaker.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Mr. Hurd. If you'd like to make your way down, you're welcome. Again, 5 minutes will be allocated. Would you like to be told when only one is left? No? Okay. Over to you.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak in support of this planning application. As confirmed by the officer and explained clearly in the report, there is a significant demand for additional student accommodation in Plymouth. Student numbers are increasing on a year-by-year basis, and despite the large number of students, there is a relatively small amount of purpose-built student accommodation available. Nearly 70% of all students do not have access to PBSA, and there are still thousands of students living in converted HMO-style properties. Despite this, given the choice, many students are choosing PBSA over HMO dwellings due to the better standard of the accommodation, the additional security, on-site management, and the close proximity to the university and the town centre. Unlike some of the existing PBSA in the city, the proposals will be available to all students, and occupation will not be restricted to first year or international students. As confirmed in the officer report, the increase in student numbers is putting pressure on the city's housing stock, and the provision of new PBSA will provide much needed dedicated student housing in accordance with the council's objective to house the majority of students in PBSA. The proposals therefore support the wider aim of the council to free up homes that were previously occupied by students so that more dwellings will be available for young people and families. The officer report contains a detailed analysis of the main issues associated with the principle of development and concludes that the proposals accord with policies SPT2 and DEV 12 of the Joint Local Plan. Further, the university has confirmed its support for the application. Members will note from the presentation and the images shown by the officer that the proposals provide a contemporary design solution for the site, significantly improving the character and appearance of the immediate area and bringing a prominent building adjacent to one of the main routes into the city centre back into active use. The proposed extension helps to give the site a presence in the street scene and significantly improves the local townscape. As confirmed in the officer report, the design is considered to be of a high quality and compliant with the relevant policies of the JLP. Members will also note from the officer report that a pre-application inquiry was submitted in 2022, prior to the submission of this formal planning application. The proposals as set out are therefore the result of 2 years of pre-app discussions with the council, which has seen the scheme change notably since the first iterations were presented to officers. The applicant, Bryce Properties, is a locally established property business that provides high-quality student accommodation to students in Plymouth. The business has been operating for over 26 years and its property stock has been fully let throughout this time frame. Bryce Properties owns and manages over 100 properties containing over 320 bed spaces. The friendly and well-established office is in a perfect location on North Hill, opposite the University of Plymouth and adjacent to the site. There are 5 full-time members of staff in the office managing the Bryce Properties portfolio, and it is open to the public during normal business hours. There are also 2 full-time maintenance personnel looking after the day-to-day running of the property portfolio from a maintenance and inspection point of view. Alongside this, Bryce Properties employs local specialist contractors to cover all other aspects of managing their portfolio. It has an open door policy should members of the community need to engage with the company. Finally, Bryce Properties is extremely well known for providing some of the highest quality properties in Plymouth and partners with the University of Plymouth and is a major sponsor of the Student Union. It is also the main sponsor of the Plymouth Marjon University Student Union and is committed to investing in Plymouth. We ask that you support the officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. If you'd like to make your way back. So it's now open to us. Abby, can I put something to you first? We've heard conflicting views and thoughts as to student numbers and are they on the rise, on the decline, etc. Could you give us your take on that, please?
Yes, so based on Plymouth City Council's monitoring data, student numbers were declining, but since 2020, they've then started to increase.
And what do we do to find that out? What's the methodology, if you like, for that?
I believe it's in liaison with Plymouth University and the...
Apologies, Chair. So we do meet regularly with the universities to understand, obviously, their growth patterns and needs. We did a couple of months ago where they outlined the increasing need for accommodation, in particular the changing pattern of students. So students are now looking to stay in halls of residence longer than they were, so coming back into residence for the 2nd and 3rd year. And it's something that the universities has been keen, and I think we've got a representation from the university on this one. Yep.
Thank you. who's going to be first on the... Paul.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. One is with the student numbers, are you including students who live in Plymouth already in those numbers? And the other point is, when the building's being altered, is it all gonna, are all the lorries going to be up the side road, or are you going to be causing problems on North Hill during the building work?
In terms of the total number of student figures, it's the total enrolment student numbers that we have as a council that we've published. I don't know the breakdown of those. And in terms of the construction lorries, officers are recommending a condition for a construction traffic management plan. So the details of the construction would have to be submitted to the council and agreed with the highway authority before works can commence on site.
What's going through, I mean, on that last point, which is a very, very fair one, what's going through in my mind is, given the nature of North Hill, it's a main road, very, very busy, etc. And if I'm the only person who gets annoyed by roadworks on North Hill, I would be extremely surprised. I would not be comfortable in approving this without having the two ward councillors sign off or be consulted about the sign off of the construction management plan. That's what's going through my mind at this point. Paul, was that okay for now? Thanks. Maddie, and then we'll go to Kathy.
Thank you, Chair. Can we just flick a few slides back, please, Abby? And can we have a look at the bedroom sizes, please? So how actually, I can't see, I'm absolutely blind as a bat, that's why I had to remove my glasses earlier. How big are the actual bedrooms, please? I mean, are they big enough to get sort of storage and a double bed, or is it just literally single bed accommodation?
So the actual site, so they're self-contained units, so they're bedrooms that provide en-suites and kitchen facilities. They range in size from 20 square metres to 27 square metres, which is consistent with other purpose-built student developments within the city.
My question is, you see, because obviously having a daughter who's been through university, and I don't know, I think I'm the oldest one probably in the room at the moment, but anyway, first year of university, you're in halls. Second year of university, you've established relationships, partnerships, and sometimes students want to move in with each other to support each other, etc. And it just concerns me, there's a lot of student accommodation for single beds. It doesn't actually cater for the second year students, where they would like to actually spend more time with a partner in a relationship. So that's my first issue. I think the bedroom sizes just strike me as being quite small. And the other thing is, I mean, one of the actual representations says here, and we've heard so much in the previous application about the housing crisis. I mean, we've just agreed to build on a car park because of it. So why is it not for professional people or students that have actually, I mean, why isn't Plymouth keeping their homegrown stock? They've spent 3-4 years at university. They've done an amazing job. Why aren't we trying to keep them? Why is there another block of student accommodation going up on North Hill when actually it could be perhaps for professional people who want to stay in the city rather than have to hunt around and try and find somewhere to live? And the other thing is, you did mention...
I'm just going to come in there on, because we have this before. We can only decide what's in front of us.
Absolutely.
So were somebody else, Maddie Bridgman Property Enterprises, wanting to buy this property and propose professional accommodation, you would be totally free to do so and present your case. We can only determine what's proposed and the planning merits or demerits of that.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the justifications you actually mentioned, Abby, was around releasing HMOs back into family use, etc. So my question is, how many HMOs have actually been released back into family use after the influx of student accommodation that we've currently got?
I have the data that I mentioned in the speech. Just to make sure I get it correct. So the Council's monitoring data last published in March 2023 shows a steady decline in the number of non-purpose-built student accommodation dwelling units solely occupied by students, which have dropped from 3,373 in 2014 to 1,823 in 2022. So that's the best data.
So just to clarify, I think what the officer's saying is that we know that they've come out of student-only use, but that doesn't necessarily indicate that they've gone back to family use. They may well have just gone to open market HMO, for instance.
Okay, thank you. So we don't know then. That's the honest answer, isn't it? So one more question. I mean, I actually completely agree with Councillor Ricketts here. Dev 12.3, obviously we've had that up on the screen. We've got the brand new block right across the road that's just been purpose-built, which is fantastic. It's a great-looking building. But I do agree there is too much conveyance of student accommodation in this area. So my thoughts personally are to actually decline this application and vote against it in support of Dev 12.3 of the saturation of the market for student accommodation. If it was, as I stated, if it was for professional people or people who wanted to stay in the city and thrive in the city and contribute to our economy moving forward after education, I would be 100%. I'd be dancing, cartwheeling around the council house. Thank you very much for your time, Chair. Abby.
Thanks. Just going back to Maddie's, I think it was your first point, if it wasn't, forgive me, about the size of the living accommodation. Are there any national standards? I find it very difficult to understand what 10 square metres, 100 square metres, that I find it very difficult to go along with that or to visualise it. Are there any national standards set out for accommodation of this sort? And if so, how does this measure up against them?
No, there's no standard set out for student accommodation, for self-purpose-built student accommodation. As I say, I've assessed it against other approved PBSA developments in the city, and the sizes are consistent with those.
Thanks. Kathy was next.
Thank you, Chair. I believe Amy said that they could easily be converted into flats.
You mean Abby?
Sorry, Abby. Abby, sorry. They could easily be converted into flats if necessary, but wouldn't flats require to have parking spaces? And can you assure me that you'd need to have a new application if they were going to be converted into flats?
Yeah, so to convert the building to C3 standard residential flats, that would be a planning change of use, so they'd have to submit a planning application. Highway Authority have considered the site suitable for car-free development, so whether that's still the case, given it's an accessible location, proximity to public transport for C3 flats, that may well be the case. That would be for Highway Authority to assess at application stage.
Thanks. Matt.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of Dev 12.3, it talks about excessive numbers of students in a residential area. Is that point relative? Like, if we were to put a block of 500 student flats in the middle of Southway, that's relatively different to putting a block of student flats in Drake, where it's right next to the university. So is that point in Dev 12
I just watched Carol's blood pressure at this point, talking about that in Southway.
Because that doesn't feel excessive, adding 16 more students into a ward that is literally contains the university and should have student accommodation in for obvious reasons.
Yes, so it is relative. So there's no definition within the local policy as to what is excessive concentration. We need to look at the site's context and make our own judgment.
Thanks. Josh.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard a few things, some of which I feel might be presumptions, so it'd be really good if you could help me clarify. So there's this point about students being unprofessional, but at the same point I'm hearing that in Plymouth and nationally, students are demanding better quality accommodation, this purpose-built accommodation. That kind of then leads in, I'll line you up a few things here. That kind of leads me into then thinking this joined-up thinking piece about, freeing up housing stock across the city. For me, I can only speak personally. In 2010, I was walking, a 4-year-old to Mount Street Primary School, and walking past the mousetrap, or whatever it was, in incarnation at that time, it was quite common to see, sick and all sorts of horrible stuff on the way to school. But this feels like a cultural change within our city, that actually students are wanting a different experience, a new experience. Is that the case? Sorry, the question, okay, I'll clarify the question there, because I can see I've thrown that on you. It feels like they want better quality. Is that not what we're trying to deliver here?
Yes, I think that is the message coming through. It's certainly the message coming through from the applicant, is that students are more conscious of their living environments, and they are looking for that higher quality accommodation now. So based on the information submitted, I would agree that that is the case.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have any others lined up, or is that okay for now?
I don't know. I don't want to put you in front of the headlights. I guess, the other piece sort of about mental health, and we've heard that, removing and putting people in the basement there is a travesty. But again, my naive understanding is if you have a park or reservoir directly opposite you, that you actually have, quite an enviable amenity right on your doorstep. Is that part of the consideration?
Yeah, so as part of Dev 12, we obviously have to look at the quality of the design. We acknowledge that there's no external amenity space on site, but this is justified or mitigated by the proximity to Drake's Reservoir, Drake's Place, Beaumont Park's an 11-minute walking distance. So that's taken into consideration.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh. Carol, did I see your hand up? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I would be in support of this application in the fact that I too have had 2 daughters go away to university to stay first year in halls and then HMOs afterwards. And their best time was usually in the purpose-built studio flats. That's what I found. They had their own toilet, their own facilities. They weren't sharing with men, ladies sharing with men. It was their own thing. And secondly, I think coming from Manchester, which is a huge population of students, I don't think professional couples would like to live in a student-based area opposite a university where they have loud noise and young people. And I think this is a great idea for students. They've got the amenities of the Hoe. They can go down to the Hoe. They're minutes away from Central Park. They've got a lot more than the wards out in the north have on their doorstep, and I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification on some of the issues that have already been raised. I really do see the issue around communities and possible issues of too many students. But if you look up North Hill, if you come up from the university, it's a long time before you see that community. And what you do see is these buildings on the right are just an eyesore, and they have been for about 4 years. So I can see the growing wish to see that as a university environment. But my question really is about, it's mentioned, but is there evidence that if we do provide high quality student accommodation, this takes the pressure off other areas of the city just a little bit outside the university area, where you do still have quite severe tensions between residents who are next door to ordinary homes that have been converted into student flats. And this is all around the sort of periphery of the university area. So it was mentioned, but it didn't seem quite clear to me whether there is evidence that providing this special accommodation does take some of the pressure off the other residential areas. Are we seeing that?
I think that the truthful answer is we can't be certain. I mean, what we are seeing is the number of HMOs reduce at the same time as the number of purpose-built student accommodation rooms increase. So logically, you could link the two together, but we don't have the data that would verify that, an accommodation has been built and people have moved. But we would expect, and that was the purpose of the Article 4 direction, was to try and contain, and manage the HMO kind of presence in those, highly concentrated areas, and the purpose-built accommodation will, it is a bit of a release valve in that sense to those areas, and certainly intended to be.
Thank you very much, Chair. It seems to me whatever the arguments are around a growing or shrinking population of students, largely uneducated views on this matter, I probably know better than most, but we don't need to really go into that because the fact of the matter is we do have a sizable student population. That student population does have to be housed, and a student population is probably best housed next to the universities where they want to go, and if you try and move them somewhere else, they won't want to go there. There are advantages to conversion of this building to student population. It doesn't offer any amenity whatsoever currently. It definitely doesn't offer any accommodation. So if I suppose the correlatory analysis that's been put forward so far is that as we increase the amount of student-built accommodation, the number of HMOs go down. That's not something that anyone's really going to challenge, or anyone with a rational mind would challenge, because it's obvious that student population have got to go somewhere. If they're in purpose-built student accommodation, they're not going to be in HMOs. So that clearly would reduce the amount of students using HMOs, which would release them for either a professional population staying within Plymouth or to conversion back into family homes. Family homes and flats that the city really badly needs. So this is basically going to increase the accommodation within Plymouth by 16 homes. That's a net benefit, potentially releasing 3 to 4 HMOs back into the general population. That's only a net benefit to the housing issues that we face in this city. Secondly, saying it's in a residential area is stretching the point somewhat, specifically its location, which is effectively its use was never as housing, it was as a business. It was in a business that hasn't run for quite some years. It is not next to non-student accommodation properties. It is basically adjacent to businesses catering to students, a university catering to students, shops largely catering to students, bars largely catering to students. It is in a predominantly student area. So I believe it would be fitting with that area to have student accommodation within a student area 4 minutes away from the university. So I believe it would be beneficial to the local area, be beneficial to the population, and be beneficial to that particular property. And I have only one other point, which is that it is the University of Plymouth, not Plymouth University. That's it. Thank you very much.
We will all take note, and it's your job to pull us up if anyone makes that mistake again. I think we've again reached a natural conclusion, and I think Jeremy said an awful lot of common sense things in his remarks there. This is a student area of Plymouth, and it has been, I suppose, for the last 70 odd years since the Polytechnic as it was first cited there. That would have been the time to have the argument about not concentrating students on the North Hill Greenbank area, but we're a little bit late for that debate. I think there is a lot of scope, and maybe Stuart, if you and your colleague could take this offline, to do some proper research into the HMO versus purpose-built student accommodation debate. We've had a lot of sensible points made, I think, in terms of the more accommodation like this that gets built, the less the demand is to convert, Victorian terraces, etc., and I use that in its loosest term. It would be useful to get some really accurate figures on that, see if there is a correlation as one increases, the other decreases. Nobody knows that for sure, even, well, I'm summing up. Did you want to come back on that? Very quickly, Josh, go on then, yeah.
Apologies. On that point, I guess playing devil's advocate, I wonder, should we be pressing and saying, you know, should the massing be even greater than it is at this point? There is such a demand for the city, and I'm unclear as whether there could be potential to go higher to aid, you know, that supposed behaviour you're describing.
Again, we can only decide what's in front of us, but I'm sure any watching agents of developers will have taken your points fully on board. It's a point that's extremely fair. I think it would be useful if we could look at that offline, with whichever arm of the council is most appropriate. But we are a university town and city in many ways. The student population contributes greatly, I think, to all aspects of our life in Plymouth, culturally, economically, socially. And for all the points that Jeremy eloquently made, this area is tailor-made for this sort of accommodation. It's a very good quality, and if it does take the pressure off otherwise residential accommodation for young professionals or families, that could only be a good thing, and I'm happy to support the recommendation. Are we happy, just on Paul's initial point, going back to the beginning in terms of the construction, that we would be happy for the construction condition to be signed off by the service director in consultation with Councillor Ricketts and Councillor Holloway? I think all of us who, never mind local people in the area, those of us who use North Hill regularly, I think would find that welcome. I'm not seeing any shaking of heads, so we'll have that as... we'll
have to second that proposal.
Have Maddie as the seconder, so I'll take that as agreed. There doesn't seem to be any opposition. So I think we are ready to bring this to a conclusion, make our minds up. I'm happy to support it, and if we could open the voting, and Jeremy will be our timekeeper for this one. That we declare the result? Okay, I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Item number 7 is, to use the correct grammatical form, is the list of planning application decisions. Are there any points by exception anybody wants to raise or highlight there? No, we'll note those. And item number 8 are the appeal decisions. Stuart, is there anything you might want to highlight to us there? You don't have to, but is there anything that... Yep.
Only one that committee might remember was Carew Gardens. It came before the committee. It was refused. We've had the applicant subsequently put in another application, which we considered under delegated authority. We didn't think that it had met the committee's concerns, so we refused the application. The applicant appealed, and the appeal was allowed.
Anything from the committee on the appeal decisions? No, we will note those. I don't think we've got any exempt business, so I'll draw the meeting to a conclusion. Thank you for all your contributions today, and look forward to seeing you next time.